So this was a journey, and going from the audience to the microphone to sing was a journey also, and that started a long time ago. I call my talk Earth School because I've come so far by having sometimes very painful lessons, and we've all had our lessons in this life. But it's what we do with them and how we react to them that's the important thing. I've learned that everything that happens, good and bad, is truly for our highest good. It is not just a trite saying for me. I think you all know that I went through an illness and had to be dependent on other people for my daily functioning. But the good that came out of that was extraordinary. The people who came to help me, the many times I got doctor's appointments within one day that were, reportedly, not available for months, or some days that were, and people that were otherwise hard to reach. But I made friends and I made connections and I had incredible feelings of love and increased spiritual knowledge that everything is truly conspiring in our favor. So, the story is that I used to be small. I spoke in a small voice. I looked down at the ground. I couldn't look people in the eye. When called on in class, I would blush bright red, and I'm fair-skinned. And when I blush, my head turns into a beefsteak tomato. It's the truth. So you could say that I was shy, but shyness is really just another word for low self-esteem. I also had constant anxiety, and along with it, a healthy, or really not so healthy, dose of anger. I had a lot to deal with just in my own child brain, and when you live in a certain state, you don't realize it because it's just always been that way. For me, the fear and anxiety are what I remember affecting me the most. So if anyone had a reason to avoid their fears, it was me, and as a child, I did avoid them. I spent a lot of time alone, and that was actually perfectly okay with me. But in college, I somehow realized that I needed a strategy, and I set out in my ship in an unknown direction. I became aware that I needed to face my fear. And eventually I developed several strategies for overcoming not just fear, but other negative emotions. But fear is a big one. It's the one behind a need for control, which is also something that I experienced. Unfortunately, I was able to purge. So, what's the fear behind losing control? What is the fear behind losing control? It's losing control. You're afraid of losing control. I gave you the answer in the question. So, who among us feels no fear? In all of its forms, anxiety, stress, self-doubt, apprehension about the future, fear of the unknown, fear of public speaking, which is reportedly the number one fear, right? And fear of death is number 2. And I love Seinfeld's take on this. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but he said, that means that at a funeral, more people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. So, personally, I'm really happy to be alive, and I would rather be able to talk to you. So it's part of the human condition. It has an evolutionary purpose. Our brains developed to look for what's wrong and to be fearful because it kept us alive over the millennia. Today we have less to fear than ever before in history. We're no longer being chased by saber-toothed cats. We have cures for disease, and yet humanity still battles fear to the point that anti-anxiety medication can be detected in the water. Historically, religion has unfortunately been used to foment that fear, to instill fear for our souls, which increased attendance and dependence and donations. Because of course the more money you give, the higher your soul goes in heaven. Thank you for laughing, yes. I believe that the true purpose of religion is the exact opposite. It's to be an antidote for that fear. Because fear is one of the biggest barriers to us living our highest and best lives, the lives that we were born to discover, that God wants us to live. It is a fact that there is one particular phrase that is the most frequently used in both the Old and New Testaments. Does anybody know? This is an interactive talk. Fear not. Do not fear. And several variations of that. I read that in the I did my research. And I read that in the King James Version, some variation of that phrase appears 103 times. To me, this is significant. To me, this is an enormous message that the Holy Bible is trying to give to all of us. We're being instructed how to live, to learn to live without fear, resting in the knowledge that God and the angels are watching and helping. Another word for this is, of course, faith. There's a gap between what we believe and how we are, and my aim is to close that gap as much as I can. So, one of my strategies for overcoming fear, it's not just a strategy, but a deeply held belief, that we're in the presence of Spirit 100% of the time, and I don't think I'd get any argument from anybody here. And that the whole of the universe wants nothing more than for all of us to succeed. Each and every human being on Earth School. The visual I like to use when I need encouragement, and I did this last night, is that I'm standing on a field of a football stadium, alone, and the stands are packed with beings of light, and they're all cheering for me. And you all have your own stadiums, an infinite number of them, and the whole universe is cheering you on. We don't recognize our own power. When you step forward in faith and with good intentions for yourself and others, despite your fear, you'll find things falling into place. The lights turn green and the way becomes easy. And I have many examples in my life of both the way not being easy and propelling me back on track, and the way opening for me. And I'm going to tell you a story. It's a little bit long, but I'll try to make it brief. But I took a trip to Prague in 2007, and I bead, and I realized that many of the beads that I have are called Czech glass. So I decided that I wanted to find out where these beads were made, and I found they were made in a town called Jablanek with a J, and that Jablanek was 60 miles north of Prague. So I found the route. I had to take the trolley to the train to the bus, and people in the Czech Republic really don't speak English. They tell you that they speak English, but they really don't. I mean, you can't really have a conversation. Maybe there's like, where's the bathroom, but that's about all, especially as you get further away from the tourist area. And I was far from that. So I was on the trolley, and pardon me, and I thought to myself, I said to God, if I'm meant to get beads, then so be it. And if not, I'll just turn around and come home. And so I was on the train, and it was full, and there was one empty seat next to me, and at one of the stops, 2 women got on, and they were speaking English. And one of them sat next to me, and she turned out to be from California. And her friend lived in Czech Republic and was bilingual. She spoke both Czech and English. And she turned out to be instrumental at the bus stop for telling the lady that I needed a round-trip ticket to Jablanek. So that was the first thing. I got on the bus, and the bus was stopping in cornfields, and we were passing villages, and I'm like, how am I going to know when I'm in Jablanek? So I went to the front of the bus, and I spoke to the driver. He didn't speak any English, but when I said the name of the town, he went like this. He went, Jablanek, So at least I knew I wasn't there yet. And so I'm sitting at the bus feeling kind of anxious, and then I saw this big sign, and of course this was like an hour-long drive, but I saw a big sign that said, welcome to Jablanek, in English. So I'm like, yay, okay, I'm in Jablanek. And then I realized Jablanek is a really big city. How am I going to know where I need to get off the bus? So sitting in the front seat, just across the aisle, was a young woman, a young Czech woman, And I don't know if any of you have been to that area, but communism, I think, had a real impact on the people. They looked very hard, and she was kind of stern-looking, staring straight ahead. So it wasn't terribly easy to speak to her, but I did. I leaned over and I said, "Excuse me, do you know where I can find some beads?" And she didn't really say anything, but she nodded her head and said, yeah, and just gestured for me to follow her. So we pulled into a bus stop depot that was just a giant parking lot with big industrial-looking buildings made out of brick all around. I never in a million years would have thought that I should get off there. And she got off the bus, and I followed her, and she led me up this flight of stairs between two of those big imposing buildings, and out we came into City Square. And it was a beautiful sight. And I said, "Do you know where I can get a map?" And she led me a little further, and she pointed to a building up on the hill, and it was City Hall. So I gave my angel a hug, and I went to City Hall, I got my map, I got my beads, and I came home with probably 20 pounds of Czech glass beads in my backpack. So this power can be used for both the profound and the mundane. I think God just wants us to have what we want. We always say God's will be done, but I think he also wants our will to be done. When we step forward in faith, he's with us. Getting the beads was not anything profound, but I think maybe the journey to get the beads was. So I don't think this necessarily comes naturally to people. It takes practice. It's not magic, and for a pragmatist like me, it's a process. I'm sure there are people who can flip a switch and have an instant change of heart and mind, but I'm not one of them. So I developed these strategies, and I sought help of every sort. Books, counseling, hypnotism, to try to address the low self-esteem, because I rationalized that I needed to reprogram my brain. And it was a long road that culminated in my participation in an organization that helped bring into my awareness more of the erroneous beliefs that kept me small and uncertain of my own power. And I am happy to talk about that organization for anybody that's curious. I just don't want to sound like a commercial. So please feel free. Their only employee is here today in the congregation. So holding them up to the light of day, hearing the innermost truth, helped eventually to shift it. And I'm going to read a quote by Khalil Gibran, who I affectionately call Gibby. I love Gibby. Well, at a time of extreme emotional disruption in my life, the prophet lived on my kitchen table for months and was a great comfort to me. So Gibby says, "Your hearts know in silence the secrets of the days and the nights, but your ears thirst for the sound of your heart's knowledge. You would know in words that which you have always known in thought." The power of hearing your innermost truth cannot be underestimated. I have felt it almost like not a punch, not a painful punch, but a physical sensation of hearing your innermost truth. It's powerful. Another strategy is what I now call the discomfort zone. I almost named the talk that, but I didn't think anybody would come. Who wants to be uncomfortable? Nobody. Most people spend the majority of their time trying to avoid discomfort. So why would we do that? To answer, I'm going to quote one of my heroes, Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, "We gain strength and courage and confidence by each experience in which we really stop to look fear in the face. We must do that which we think we cannot do." When I first started singing in my early 30s, I absolutely thought that I could not do that. I was terrible. I really sounded terrible, I'm not lying to you. I played a recording of myself during a rehearsal one time and I burst into tears. It sounded so bad. But I kept going. I would stand on stage at Unity of Fairfax and shake and quiver like a leaf at the early service. And every step of the way I thought I'd maxed out in my abilities, but Spirit always offered more opportunities to continue growing and improving my voice and my confidence. At any point I could have said no, but my soul kept pushing me when I really wanted to go home. With that awareness, I can now intentionally put myself into a more open state of mind as I look and listen and feel for the right path. So if we're here to overcome our challenges, we can enter into this process, excuse me, willingly, and open ourselves to Spirit, and thus make the way easier for ourselves. The universe is compassionate, and it will send us the help that we need when we ask, and even welcome it. And this truth is in the Bible. We've all heard the biblical verse in Matthew 7:7, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you." I think this is profound spiritual truth. And people do seek all over the place, in ashrams, in monasteries, with shamans, and there's nothing wrong with that. People may need to have these experiences to achieve the inner shift, but it is in the end an inward journey. There's an older seek and you will find verse that is quite a bit different. Has anybody heard of the Gnostic Gospels? Yes. And the Gospel of Thomas, which purports to be a collection of sayings directly from Jesus. So I quote, Jesus said, "Let him who seeks..." Oh, I wanted to tell you that, for those who don't know, that the Gnostic Gospels were dug up in Egypt in 1945, having been buried there for nearly 2,000 years. So this was very early Christianity. They were undoubtedly buried to save them from being burned. So the Gospel of Thomas says, Jesus said, "Let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over the all." This packs a lot more punch than the New International Version. It's not saying we will live in comfort and luxury for our entire lives. This is saying that in the seeking we will have to go through the fire, but by doing so we will come out into the light, even glory. We can debate what rule over the all means, but I think it means to achieve mastery of oneself, to know oneself. A Buddhist monk once said to me that if you know yourself, you are a Buddha. Trusting in Spirit and releasing fears and barriers can lead to pretty remarkable things. I was out for a walk some years ago in Warrenton, and I came almost to a driveway when two large dogs, I think they were Weimaraners, came down the driveway and confronted me. The larger of them had his head down and he was growling, and I knew he was a threat. There was a tall wooden fence on my left that I couldn't see over or through. And without any conscious thought, I said in a loud voice, "Call your dogs!" I didn't know anybody was around, and I don't know why I said that, but a woman immediately called them, and they obeyed. Another time I was on a mobility lesson. I teach orientation mobility to blind and vision impaired people. We were on a busy metro platform. My adult vision impaired student was 15 or 20 feet away on my left, but I couldn't see her because of all the people. I was leaning against the escalator waiting for the train. Again, without conscious thought, I stepped away from the escalator, turned left, and started walking, just in time to see my student disappear into the crowd, following someone she'd asked for help. So I think Spirit was helping me not lose my student. I have more examples. It doesn't happen frequently, but I feel the presence of Spirit in my life when it does. I believe we all have this power available to us, that we can obey without question and impulse, whether it comes from God or our own inner knowing. It's just the Spirit's voice is very soft and can't overcome our own will if we choose to ignore it. I know that when I've ignored my intuition, I've always regretted it. So I listed some strategies for overcoming fear. I didn't elaborate on all of these. I actually had to cut out a lot of what I was in my talk. But one is strive to learn about and understand the object of your fear. There's a Gandhi quote that I couldn't find about you cannot fear or hate what you understand, and I think that that's really true. 2 is visualize all the power of the universe conspiring to help you and know it without a doubt. 3 is allow yourself to feel discomfort and even seek it for your higher good. At least occasionally seek the discomfort zone. Spend time consciously striving to integrate your beliefs and ideals more deeply into your life. Ask yourself, if I really believed this, how would I think or speak or behave differently? When the stuff hits the fan, work to release doubts, discouragement, and fear, and know without question that the universe has something even better planned for you. In fact, strive to move from an attitude of, oh great, another learning opportunity, eye roll, to one of excitement, of knowing that there's something spectacular in store for you, better than you can even imagine. And I kind of wrote a song about this that I sang here at this church. When the winds of change start blowing, put up your sail. Okay, so we can put up our sails and allow Spirit to take us where we need to be. Don't allow the past to dictate your future. That one can take years of counseling. But that is this is the striving, this is the goal, right? We're not all there, I'm not there, none of us are there. We just strive for that, and that's what makes us good and holy, and what puts spiritual power behind us. And 7 is never give up. Never ever give up. The visual that I like for this, and maybe some of you have seen it, is the picture of the stork swallowing a frog head first. Have anybody ever seen that? Yeah. The stork is swallowing, trying to swallow the frog, but the frog has its arms out the corners of the stork's mouth and reaching around and grabbing its neck so it can't swallow. That's truly never giving up. So there's always hope, and that's part of this too. I remember reading a story about a man who was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and he said, hope is as essential to life as breathing. You have to have hope in order to carry on. So success in life, happiness, evolution of spirit amounts to what you do with your 3-pound universe. Feeling, love, stepping forward in faith, feeling your worth before God. This is not the only way to spiritual truth, but it definitely is a way to finding not just a genuine comfort zone, but an ever-expanding love and happiness. I believe we are here in Earth School to learn how to manifest our highest and best on the earth plane, to grow in our personal power for the greater good, and to help each other, to remove the barriers to love, and to walk in step with Spirit in the fullness of your being. So to end, I'll read another quote. As you can see, I love quotes. I collect them. I got this from a meetup group webpage, and it wasn't attributed to anyone, but it says, regardless of how we get there, where we're going, or whatever we're doing when we get there, we'll arrive just in time for whatever awaits us at the finish line. God bless, and amen.